Imagine working your entire life for one single goal. You pour every ounce of your being into it. The long hours, the lonely roads, the countless small failures and minor victories. You are persistent, you are patient, and you are good. And then finally, after decades of trying, you get it. The one thing you've always wanted is right there, in the palm of your hand. Your dream is no longer a dream, it's real. Now imagine, it's all snatched away in a single violent instant. This is the story of a man like that. It's a story you might think you know, but you probably only know its most famous chapter, and from someone else's perspective. It's a life that has been tragically and perhaps unfairly relegated to a footnote in a more celebrated tale of loss. Today we're talking about a true giant of country music, a man they called 11 yards of personality, a man with a voice as deep as a West Virginia valley and a quiet strength forged in the heat of World War II. We're talking about Hawkshaw Hawkins, and his life is one of the most heartbreaking and profound what-ifs in all of music history. Harold Franklin Hawkins, later known by his stage name Hawkshaw Hawkins, was born in 1921 in Huntington, West Virginia. This region, part of the Appalachian Mountains, was characterized by its striking natural landscapes, steep hills, dense forests, and winding rivers that mirrored the resilient and tough spirit of its inhabitants. The local economy heavily revolved around coal mining, which provided employment but also imposed a grueling daily routine on families, often involving long hours in dangerous underground conditions. Community life was deeply influenced by religious institutions, where churches served not only as places of worship, but also as social hubs for gatherings, moral guidance, and support during hardships. Additionally, family life centered on the front porch, a simple yet vital space for relaxation and bonding. In an era predating widespread television adoption, entertainment was homemade and acoustic, with instruments like fiddles and guitars dominating evenings filled with folk tunes passed down through generations. Radio emerged as a dominant medium, broadcasting regional music that fostered a strong sense of local identity and pride, connecting isolated communities to broader cultural narratives. As Hawkshaw grew up amid the Great Depression, which began in 1929 and cast a long shadow over his formative years, he internalized lessons of perseverance, hard work, and ingenuity from a young age. The economic downturn ravaged Appalachia, exacerbating poverty, unemployment, and scarcity, forcing families to rely on self-sufficiency and barter systems for survival. Described as a tall, robust child with a sturdy build, Hawkins embodied the archetype of American resilience often romanticized in folklore. His early experiences were emblematic of rural Americana, blending resourcefulness with a touch of adventure. A particularly illustrative anecdote from his youth highlights this. He obtained his first guitar not through purchase, but via a trade, exchanging 5 rabbits he had personally trapped for the instrument with a neighbor. This act underscored the barter economy prevalent in Depression-era rural life and marked the beginning of his musical journey. On this modest second-hand guitar, he started experimenting with melodies, replicating the hillbilly music, a term then used for early country and folk genres that echoed from radio broadcasts. Stations such as the Grand Ole Opry in Nashville transmitted these sounds, featuring raw, storytelling-driven songs that captivated him. Drawn to the lyrical themes of romance, loss, wandering lifestyles, and everyday struggles, Hawkins found in them an emotional outlet and inspiration. These influences ignited his aspirations, planting the seeds of a desire to escape the confines of West Virginia's hills and pursue a career that could elevate his voice beyond local porches. By his late teens and early 20s, Hawkins had developed a budding passion for music that promised a path out of the economic and geographic limitations of his upbringing. The hillbilly tunes he practiced evolved into a personal repertoire, reflecting the oral traditions of Appalachian storytelling through song. His deep baritone voice, which would later become his signature, began to take shape during informal performances at home or local gatherings. This period represented a transitional phase where the dreams of a broader life clashed with the realities of a world on the brink of global conflict. The radio continued to serve as his window to the outside world, exposing him to professional musicians and reinforcing his ambition to contribute to the genre that spoke so profoundly to his experiences. Hawkins's trajectory shifted dramatically with the United States' entry into World War II following the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941. Like countless young men of his era, he enlisted in the U.S. Army, embodying the patriotic duty that swept the nation. His service exposed him to the harshest realities of combat, including participation in some of the war's most intense and pivotal battles, such as the Battle of the Bulge in late 1944 to early 1945. This grueling campaign in the Ardennes forest involved freezing conditions, heavy artillery, and fierce engagements against German forces, testing soldiers' physical and mental limits. The war's impact on Hawkins was profound and transformative. It accelerated his maturation, turning the young man from Huntington into a seasoned veteran who had confronted death, witnessed global devastation, and gained a broader worldview through travels across Europe and the Pacific. Amid the chaos, music remained an unwavering anchor, providing solace and continuity. Stationed in Manila, Philippines, he contributed significantly to the Armed Forces radio service, where he performed and broadcasted programs that offered a slice of American culture to troops far from home. His resonant voice and familiar tunes became a lifeline for thousands of soldiers grappling with homesickness, boosting morale in the Pacific Theater. This role not only honed his performance skills under pressure, but also highlighted his emerging talent as a communicator through music. Upon his discharge from the military after the war's end in 1945, Hawkins returned to the United States profoundly changed. No longer the naive youth with a traded guitar, he was now a battle-hardened veteran equipped with personal narratives of sacrifice and survival, complemented by a mature, deep baritone voice that carried the weight of his experiences. The war had instilled in him a subdued yet profound strength and emotional depth, qualities that would infuse his future music with authenticity and gravitas. This homecoming marked the launch pad for his professional music career, as he channeled his wartime radio experience into pursuing opportunities in the burgeoning country music scene. The late 1940s and 1950s were a golden age for country music. It was a time of transition, as the raw string band sound of hillbilly music began to evolve. A new generation of stars like Hank Williams and Lefty Frizzle were bringing a new level of poetic lyricism and emotional honesty to the genre. Honky-tonks were springing up across the country, creating a demand for music you could drink and dance to. And at the center of this world were the live radio jamborees, powerhouse shows that were the lifeblood of country music before network television took over. It was in this world that Hawkshaw Hawkins began his long, patient climb. He became a star attraction on the WWVA Jamboree out of Wheeling, West Virginia, one of the most popular and influential country shows in the nation. It was a grueling life, long hours on the road, playing to packed auditoriums and smoky bars night after night. But it's where he honed his craft. He developed a stage presence that was both commanding and charming. Standing at an imposing 6'5", he was a handsome, charismatic figure, always impeccably dressed in custom-tailored nudie suits sparkling with rhinestones. They called him 11 Yards of Personality. He signed with King Records in Cincinnati, a label famous for its raw, eclectic mix of R&B and country. His early recordings reflect this. Songs like Pan American and the up-tempo Doghouse Boogie showcased his versatility and his powerful voice. He had hits, solid placings on the country charts, but that one career-defining breakout song remained elusive. He was a respected and beloved figure within the industry, a musician's musician, but he wasn't yet a household name on the level of a Hank Williams. His persistence paid off. In 1955, he achieved a lifelong dream. He was invited to become a member of the Grand Ole Opry in Nashville. This was the pinnacle, the absolute heart of the country music universe. To be invited to join the Opry meant you had truly arrived. It provided a regular national audience and a permanent home base at the historic Ryman Auditorium, the mother church of country music. It was here, amidst the legends of the genre, that Hawkshaw's personal life would take a beautiful and fateful turn. At the Opry, he met a fiery, immensely talented young singer who was a star in her own right, Jean Shepherd. Jean was a trailblazer, one of the few solo female artists to find success in the male-dominated world of 1950s country music. She was tough, talented, and witty, a romance blossom between the gentle giant and the spirited honky-tonk angel. Their courtship was the talk of Nashville. They were a golden couple, two beloved stars of the Opry who found love behind the curtain. In 1960, they married. Their life together was deeply entwined with the music they loved. They often toured together, and their home in Madison, Tennessee, just outside Nashville, became a gathering spot for fellow musicians. Hawkshaw was by all accounts a devoted husband. He and Jean shared a deep love and mutual respect. Soon, their family grew. Their first son, Don, was born, and Hawkshaw embraced fatherhood with a quiet joy. He was a family man at heart, a stark contrast to the rowdy, hard-living image of many of his honky-tonk peers. He had his home, he had his family, he was a star of the Grand Ole Opry. Life was good, but professionally, there was still one thing missing. That one, undeniable smash hit that would elevate him from a respected Opry veteran to a national superstar. In late 1962, he found it. The song was called Lonesome 77203. Written by the great Justin Tubb, it was a classic country tearjerker, a story of a man so heartbroken he leaves his phone number in a bar for anyone who might want to talk to a lonely soul. It was the perfect vehicle for Hawkshaw's voice, deep, mournful, and achingly sincere. He recorded it for his new label, RCA Records, and everyone who heard it knew it was special. This was the one. The song was released in early 1963 and immediately started climbing the charts. After nearly 2 decades of hard work, of paying his dues on the road and in the studio, Hawkshaw Hawkins was on the cusp of his greatest triumph. He was about to become one of the biggest stars in country music. The winter of 1963 found Hawkshaw's career at a fever pitch. Lonesome 77203 was a bullet heading straight for the #1 spot. At home, his life was equally full. Jean was pregnant with their second child, a boy they planned to name after his father. Everything he had ever worked for was coming to fruition. In early March, a call came for a benefit concert in Kansas City, Kansas. A local disc jockey, Cactus Jack Call, had been killed in a car accident leaving behind a family. The country music community, always a tight-knit family, rallied to help. Hawkshaw, along with his Opry colleagues Patsy, Cline, and Cowboy Copas, agreed to perform for free. The concert, held on Sunday, March 3rd, was a huge success. The stars gave their all, raising money for the grieving family. But the weather in the Midwest was turning foul. A storm system was moving in, bringing with it rain, fog, and high winds. The initial plan had been to fly back to Nashville on Monday, but the small private plane, piloted by Patsy, Cline's manager, and Hawkshaw's friend, Randy Hughes, was grounded by the weather. They waited all day Monday. Friends in Nashville, like singer Dottie West, urged them to take a car. Dottie reportedly told Patsy, "Patsy, please don't get on that plane." But they were all anxious to get home. Patsy had her children, Cowboy Copas was eager to return to his family, and Hawkshaw was desperate to get back to his pregnant wife, Jean. He had called her from Kansas City, his voice full of excitement about the success of his new record and his love for her. It would be the last time she ever spoke to him. On the afternoon of Tuesday, March 5th, despite the persistent bad weather, the decision was made to fly. The small single-engine Piper Comanche took off from a small airport in Dyersburg, Tennessee, after a refueling stop. They were only about 90 miles from home, but as dusk fell, the weather worsened dramatically. They flew into a wall of torrential rain and thick fog. Randy Hughes was not an instrument-rated pilot, meaning he was flying by sight in conditions that demanded reliance on instruments. It was a fatal combination. The exact details of the final moments are lost to the storm, but it's believed the plane became disoriented in the turbulent zero-visibility conditions and went into a steep, uncontrollable dive. It crashed into a dense wooded hollow near Camden, Tennessee, hitting the ground at a tremendous speed. There were no survivors. The news sent a shockwave through Nashville and the entire country music world. For 2 days, the fate of the plane was unknown. Finally, the wreckage was discovered. The scene was devastating. The loss was immense. The Grand Ole Opry had lost 3 of its beloved stars in one fiery instant. But as the story was told and retold, the narrative began to crystallize around one towering figure, Patsy Cline. And this is where the quiet injustice of history begins. Patsy was without question a superstar. She was a crossover artist whose appeal was already reaching pop audiences. Her dramatic life story, her near-fatal car crash a few years earlier, her incredible comeback, made for a compelling tragic narrative. She was the bright, burning flame, and in the aftermath of the crash, her legend only grew, eclipsing the others who shared her fate. Cowboy Copas was a veteran star with a long and respected career, and Hawkshaw Hawkins. Hawkshaw was the man whose dream died at the very moment it was coming true. The cruelty of the timing is almost impossible to comprehend. In the days and weeks following his death, Lonesome 77203 continued its climb up the charts. It hit number 1 on the Billboard Country chart 4 weeks after the crash. Radio stations across America were playing the song of a man who was no longer there to hear it. The lonely voice on the record had become a real-life ghost, his song a national epitaph. Audiences were falling in love with a star they would never get to see again. For his wife, Jean Shepherd, the tragedy was a personal apocalypse. She heard the news of the crash on the radio, a horrifyingly public way to learn of her husband's death. She was 29 years old, pregnant, and already a mother to their young son, Don. In her grief, she had to plan a funeral for the love of her life. Just 1 month later, she gave birth to their second son. She named him Harold Franklin Hawkins II, or Hawkshaw Jr., a child who would only ever know his father through photographs, stories, and the sound of his voice on a record. Jean Shepherd, in a display of almost unimaginable strength, returned to the Grand Ole Opry stage just a few weeks after the birth. She had to. She had 2 sons to support. She carried her grief with a quiet dignity, but the loss of Hawkshaw defined the rest of her life. In interviews years later, her voice would still crack when she spoke of him. She once said, "There's never been anyone else. There's not supposed to be anyone else. He was the only one." It's a heartbreaking testament to the love they shared. So why has the name Hawkshaw Hawkins faded from common knowledge while Patsy Cline's has become immortal? There's no single simple answer. It's a confluence of factors. Patsy's crossover appeal and cinematic life story certainly played the biggest part. The music industry then, as now, knows how to market a tragedy, and her story was the most marketable. Furthermore, Hawkshaw's success was posthumous. The public didn't have years to build a relationship with him as a #1 selling artist. They discovered him in death. His style, too, was a bridge between the older honky-tonk sound and the smoother Nashville sound that Patsy was pioneering. In the rapidly changing landscape of the 60s, his music might have been perceived by some as belonging to a slightly earlier era. But to let his story be just a footnote to a more famous tragedy is to miss the point of his life. Hawkshaw Hawkins' significance is twofold. Musically, he was a vital and versatile artist. He was a master showman and a phenomenal vocalist, a man who could handle a fast-paced boogie number and a heartbreaking ballad with equal skill. His legacy is a reminder of the depth of talent that populated the Grand Ole Opry during its golden age. His death in the context of his life becomes more than just a tragic accident. It becomes a powerful lesson about the fragility of our dreams. He is the ultimate symbol of being so close. He worked his entire life for a moment of triumph, only to have it snatched away at the final second. It forces us to reflect on our own lives, on the goals we chase, and the importance of cherishing the journey, because the destination is never guaranteed. In the end, the story of Hawkshaw Hawkins is not just about a plane crash. It's about life, a life of service, of love, of music, and of a dream finally realized, if only for a fleeting moment. It's a call to look into the shadows of history, to find the quiet heroes and the forgotten stories. The next time you hear about the day the music died for country music, remember that it wasn't just one star that fell from the sky. Remember the gentle giant, the handsome man in the nudie suit, the loving husband and father. Remember the voice that sang of loneliness, a voice that belonged to a man who, at the end, was anything but alone, surrounded by friends on his final journey home. Remember Hawkshaw Hawkins. That's a wrap for today's video. If you enjoyed it, smash that like button, drop us a comment below, and don't forget to subscribe so you'll never miss our new content. Thanks for watching.